Hello, good evening. The second Senate impeachment trial of Donald Trump begins tomorrow. It's almost unthinkable they'll move to convict him. It would take the vote of 17 Republicans to do so. But don't fall into the trap of thinking it's therefore an empty exercise. Democrats believe they had no choice, that he willfully incited violent insurrection to defy the democratic result of the election, and that failure to bring the trial is tantamount to condoning the behaviour. Trump's legal team believe it's brazen political persecution and that you can't impeach a former president. But over the course of the next few days, maybe weeks, we'll be watching for something more subtle than voting numbers. We'll see how powerful the grip Donald Trump still has over the Republican Party and whether senators believe their voters still want to see him in charge. This will be a moment for Democrats to realise what kind of an opposition party they face and for Republicans to decide what kind of a party they want to be. In a moment, we'll look at new footage of what happened that day of violence on the Capitol. But we start with David Grossman in Washington. We've got some sense, David, of the form that the impeachment trial will take. Just walk us through it.
Yes.
And I'm going to start, if I can, with you, Gabriel Sterling. Hearing those words again, someone's going to get hurt, someone's going to get shot, someone's going to get killed. I know you didn't want to be right about this in December, but as it turns out, you were. Your thoughts on that? Steve Bolton, can I bring you in on that question? Because it's so interesting about Burke's notion of representative democracy. Do you believe that senators that are voting in the weeks ahead have to follow their conscience or just do what their voters at home tell them?
Well, that's one of the great questions of representative democracy.
Well, as I do, better than I do. This is not a criminal court. This is a political staged event. And that actually the senators will find according to what they feel their party wants them to say. You're not going to get 17 Republicans, I presume you think, even if they had all the evidence in the world, because it's about the politics, isn't it?
Well, that's your...
You heard the end of our reporter's piece. It was Rob Page from the Chicago Project who said, we're beginning to see the emergence of a new movement with violence at its core. This is the direction of the party now. Is that going too far, or do you recognise that the people who came to protest that day were not just a few extremists? They were people who had been turned by the words that the president had said.
I do think that's probably going too far.
From both of you, Gabriel Sterling and Steve Bolton, thanks very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Emily.
Now, vaccines are one of our strongest weapons against the coronavirus, and with 100 million orders in for the Oxford AstraZeneca jab, the government's relying on it to have a major effect. But the South African government has today paused their rollout of the Oxford jab after a small study found it was less effective than hoped against the COVID variant widespread in their nation, saying simply that more study was needed. We know the same variant's already here in the UK, albeit in much smaller numbers. So how worried should we be here? The health editor, Deborah Cohen, has this report. Deb Cohen there. Now, the UN Climate Change Conference, COP26, will be hosted by the UK this November. It's a chance for Britain to show commitment to global environmental policy and, in a post-Brexit age, to show leadership and collaboration with a wider world. Certainly, it strikes at the heart of the new US president's priorities. A slight spanner in the works, however, is a project now underway in Cumbria, the sign of a new coal mine, which has left environmental campaigners tearing their hair out. The coal mine's set to be built on a site near Whitehaven. Supporters say it will bring hundreds of jobs to the region. It will cost around £165 million and will extract coking coal from beneath the Irish Sea for steel making, therefore making it unnecessary in future to import coal. Environmental campaigners have criticised the Community Secretary Robert Jenrick, who decided last month not to intervene to block the new coal mine after the plans were agreed by Cumbria County Council. Mr Jenrick said he was content for the decision to be made locally. Climate change supporters are concerned with the message it sends out, a serious dent to the credibility of a country who's committed to clean energy. Well, joining us now, left it to local decision makers, and the reports are that Alok Sharma, who's running COP26, was furious. I mean, would you back Robert Jenrick saying, in this case, yes, it is down to Cumbria County Council?
Well, I asked to...
Isn't the whole premise is slightly misleading. We talked about trying to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. But just to spell it out, that doesn't mean we can't consume carbon produced abroad, does it? It just talks about what we produce. So in a way, this whole idea of talking about a net zero target is quite confusing.
Well, no, it isn't at all.